Hey everyone, it's Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little Motivational Monday. I think this is a different kind of week for us. We had a weekend of so much tumult, and you could see people were expressing their anger, and then some of their just out of controlledness, let's call it, and. I think we, have so much to unpack there that you just can't get through it in one small video that I want to shoot for you right now. And the issues are so deep rooted that it does take a lot more digging and unearthing and soul searching and depth to be able to tackle it sufficiently. Nobody's story is identical in life, right? Granted, you may have collections of people who share similar backgrounds and stories, and that does come to bear and play a role in a collective narrative for a people. America's history is littered with that, right? The world's history is littered with that in many ways. And one thing we know for sure is that we cannot change the past. It is done, it is written, and we are where we are in this moment. So the choices that we have to make are, how do we take wherever we are and forge the best path ahead? It does not mean, however, that we ignore what came before. It doesn't mean that we sweep it under a rug or we pretend it doesn't exist, because we have to learn from what came before us or earlier in our lives in order to shape better lives going forward. That's so critical, right? Sticking your head in the sand never solved any problems. Sometimes it creates more. Sometimes the problem that exists is so finite or final in its nature that sticking your head in the sand can be what sinks the boat. So we got to do better. I think that's really what it comes down to, is that we have to recognize that wherever we go is up to us, all of us, right? Everyone. And just because you don't understand someone's issue doesn't mean you don't try to empathize. You don't try to walk a mile in their shoes somehow. Right? Conversation is a really important part to where that starts, right? Asking, what's going on? Why is this happening? We don't share one another's views. Men don't share the same views. Women don't share the same views overall. People from different backgrounds don't share the same view. And backgrounds are immensely diverse and varied. Right, from socioeconomic to cultural to national, it just spans a whole arena. To sexual orientation, all kinds of things play into that, and the best place for us to be is with an open mind, to know that our perspective isn't finite. Sometimes. We think that because we have a certain level-headedness or clear-headedness about some issues as we perceive it, that our point of view is really justified. Well, sometimes we have the luxury of thinking clearly because our lives are a little bit more structured or a little bit more stable. And thank goodness for that, right? Thank God for that. But it's hard to tell the person who has been abused in one form or another, right? To have hope, right? To not have anger, or to act not out of the anger, but out of a place of love, because their core has been shaken by all these things that are much more volatile than somebody else's life may have been. Like I said before, I think we all benefit from knowing that we gotta just be better. We gotta do better. So when you have the means, help. help to uplift somebody else. When you see somebody is in pain or suffering, you help them. You don't put them down. When you see someone is in need, you help them, right? Try to understand. It doesn't mean that you say someone's actions are appropriate or just. Sometimes it's not even about that. It's, or about being there in that exact moment. Being right and being wrong doesn't necessarily solve a problem either. Compassion is the best thing we can have for one another, so that we can put in place a sense of community where we don't feel like that person is that person, meaning that person isn't some separate thing or entity to us, right? That person is a neighbor or a brother or a sister or a member in the community or a fellow citizen, a fellow patriot. When we keep painting each other with these broad strokes that say, I am me, I am this, in our case, I'm American, I'm truly American, and somehow the other person isn't, we start categorizing others in ways that make them easy to dehumanize. And once we do that, we lose or give up a bit of our own humanity as well. We've got to do good for our souls every day. And acknowledging one another's place in this world is a great place to start. Where I think about the whole notion of being better, aside from this whole sequence of events that played out this past weekend, that have been playing out or building up for quite some time in history and and found expression this weekend, as it has in others. I was thinking about this notion of being better. That sometimes we look at a problem and it's so large, it's so daunting to think about how do you solve it, that you just don't deal with it. You stick your head in the sand or pretend it doesn't exist or pretend it's not as bad as it is or whatever. And we can't do that. We've got to make progress. And so even though the problem's complicated and huge and seems insurmountable, and you wonder what you can do to solve such a big issue, everything in life takes on that format. It's just our perspective on how we see it. And sometimes we recognize that, I'm just going to do this little thing, and then I'll take care of the next little thing, and then the next little thing. And then all of a sudden you look back and you realize, oh my gosh, you're so much further along than where you thought you were going to possibly be. And that's what it's about, right? You want to, learn a new subject, right? Start with one element of it. Learn it. Then learn another element, right? You want to change your financial situation, same deal. Just start with one component. Start with doing saving, a little bit of savings here and there. And I know it's tough because you may not feel like you have it, but the act of putting away the 10% of whatever it is you make and not touching it says to you, I have to stretch everything else, and you figure it out. The act of saying, I don't understand this other person, my neighbor, my potential friend, and I'm going to make one little gesture, one little movement to understand, not with the expectation that it's going to be perfectly received, right? But with the commitment that I'm going to make it and see it through, right? That I'm going to ask the question and see where it goes and try to digest the information, and do more listening, and then try to change myself. Right? One little bit at a time. And then hopefully that also leads to a change in the other person too, in their perception of what's possible and who they are relative to you. But we've got to make that movement together. And we can, just one step at a time, one little brick at a time. Before you know it, we'll have a foundation. Before you know it, we'll have a room. Before you know it, we'll have a house. Before you know it, we'll have a huge community that's strong. So take your one step today to changing your life for the better and changing others' lives for the better. This is Dexter signing out from Los Angeles, wishing you the best. Happy Motivational Monday. Take care. Hey, if you like any of the content that I post here, please be sure to click that little like button or the heart and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. You can also subscribe on my YouTube channel, so like and subscribe me there too.